As you guys can see, the garage is a mess. I've been so focused on making progress on this car that I've kind of neglected cleaning up after myself, and we've gotten to a point where I can't really work anymore without running into something. I've also been dealing with the issue of finding tools. I keep taking tools out, putting them somewhere, and then I can't find them after the fact. So today, before we start any more progress on this car, we're gonna slowly make a pile of stuff that we wanna keep, and then a pile of trash that can go, and then also put my tools away. So that way we can have a fresh start, and then properly put this subframe back together so that we can get it back into the car. Honestly, it's already been an hour. We made a good amount of progress. I didn't really realize how much of a mess I actually made while working the last few weeks. Made a box of parts that we need to get rid of. So I'll probably get like $8 back from the recycling place for all this metal. It's not gonna be much. We got all the parts that we're gonna keep just in case we ever need them again. It's a set of hubs, brake calipers, 2 sets of brake calipers actually, which is nice. And then some miscellaneous parts like sensors and other whatnot. And I'm sure there's other parts around the garage that I need to add to this pile. One thing that you won't see in here is all the hardware that we're gonna be replacing with new zinc coated hardware. And mainly because we're not gonna get rid of this hardware, we're actually gonna send it back off, get it zinc coated again so that we have extra hardware if we ever need it in the future. But the good thing is all the new hardware is already here. We're gonna be replacing everything, and it's gonna be brand new, from the handbrake cable bolt to the brake caliper bolts to the subframe bolts. Everything is gonna get replaced, which is super nice. We don't have to worry about no ugly hardware on all the new parts. So excited for that, but I'm just gonna continue cleaning up around here. As you can see, I started messing with the diff, cleaning it up so I can paint it, and you can see how much dirt came off this thing. It's still caked on there. So I'm gonna continue at this, hopefully get this cleaned up, maybe even painted, and then we'll start assembling the entire rear subframe right here so you guys can see everything that we have before it goes back in. So now that we have majority of the garage cleaned up and we actually have some space to be walking around, I went ahead and got all the parts kind of laid out, or almost all the parts. There's a lot more just sitting inside the house. It doesn't make sense to put them all out here, but for the most part, this is everything that we're gonna be installing on the E30, and all of this is brand new or refurbished, as you guys have seen over the last few videos. I'll quickly go over each of these parts, where I got them from, so that way you guys are aware, and if you guys want to do this at home yourself, you guys know where to grab these parts as well. So starting off with the trailing arms here, these are trailing arms that we got off another donor E30. We went ahead and bought these used. So we went ahead, reinforced them using Garagistic's trailing arm reinforcement kit, and that comes with an extra plate on the bottom, as well as this little bracket right here. And then we went ahead and powder coated them this bright orange color in hopes to match the rest of the interior, but this is a lot brighter than I expected, and honestly, it still looks good. Keeping on the trailing arm front, all of our bushings are from Garagistic. As you can tell, they're the red poly bushings. That goes for our subframe bushings, our diff bushing, and all the rest of the bushing that are gonna be on this car. They're all gonna be poly, so you'll kind of see that consistency across the entire chassis going forward. And speaking of the trailing arms, we also had to replace the wheel bearings. The wheel bearings that came off the car were absolutely shot, so we got a new wheel bearing, as well as the C-clip in there. And then that's pretty much everything that bolts up to the trailing arm. We have our dust shields. I showed you these in the last video, and then we have our new brakes. Now these are the new brakes, and then these are our refurbished brake caliper bracket. This is not an OEM brake caliper, but I didn't really care too much. I got this off a premium, that's the website right there. And to go along with that, I did decide to replace our brake lines. And I believe this is a set off of ECS tuning. It's just a standard braided brake line, nothing crazy. And we have those on both sides, as well as we're gonna be replacing those on the fronts as well. Now going into the inner portion of our trailing arms, we have our new axles here. Again, these are not OEM. We still have our OEM ones sitting here, and we are gonna rebuild these eventually if we ever need them. We also have the other donor set down there. So we do have them. I'm not throwing them away or anything. I just thought it would be easier to install these new ones and save me a little bit of extra labor hours. So we'll just be installing these. It also comes with a new nut on the top, so you don't have to worry about that, and the list just continues to grow. From there we have our MTS Technik Lowering springs. So this is the entire kit of MTS Technik that I got. It comes with this kind of adjustment piece right here that goes on the rear spring. It also comes with a new shock that we don't have here, but we do have the top hat for the shock, and then the new hardware that goes along with that, and that's obviously on both sides. We're also going to be installing the coilovers on the front, and then lastly we have our subframe. It is from Vink Motorsports. I forgot what country they're from, but what the downside was to the subframe was that it came with aluminum bushings welded in here, or metal bushings welded in. Now unfortunately we did have to get this sent off, get everything laser cut out, and then insert our new poly bushings back in. So that was a headache that I did run into, but other than that, this thing is reinforced in all the major areas, and we even got our differential reinforcements done when we were cutting out the old bushings right there. So that's majority of everything, and then we also have a bunch of other stuff like this, which is an entire box of brand new zinc coated hardware that's going to replace everything on the rear end of this car. So everything that you can think of is gonna have something brand new sitting in there, no old hardware, which I'm really excited about. We even refurbished our differential. So now we have a nice clean looking differential. As you can see, we got it painted up, we addressed any surface rust, and I even cleaned up down in these holes right here. Luckily our seals look like they're in pretty good condition, so we don't need to replace those. And now we can just kind of take this off. And as you can tell, we cleaned up the front side. We didn't paint this just because I knew it was gonna get dirty again, so there was really no point. We are gonna be replacing our bushing right here, as well as this little bracket that holds the sensor into place. I'm not sure what the sensor does, but we got this new bracket just so we have that looking a little bit brand new, and the rest of the differential should be looking a lot better once we put it back into the car. So with that, there is a lot to do. There is a lot of stuff that we still need to start putting back together and you know, reinstalling on all these new parts. So I'm just gonna put the camera down, obviously record for you guys, but start getting to work and putting all the pieces back together so that the entire subframe can kind of just fall back in place. So now that we have everything clean enough, we need to start reassembling everything back together. And we're gonna start with this little ring. This protects the gasket that goes around the actual differential hole. So we'll press this back into place. Now that we have those back on, we have brand new hardware that we're gonna be installing, and we're gonna start putting these back onto the axles. So as you can see, we got our, whatever these pieces are called, onto the axles, and then we also pressed in our bushings into our trailing arms. We did all four. This one I made the mistake of not taking that pin out and doing it first, so I'll probably pop this back out and then take the pin out and do it again. But the rest of them sitting good, and I believe it's all the fat pieces, or the fat end is the one that comes to the outsides, and the thinner walls are on the insides. So now, before we do anything else, we're gonna go ahead, clean up everything down here so that we don't make the mistake of having to pick it up and then, you know, drop it to the floor, and then put it back in. And here I can also put the differential right here, bolt that back up. Everything is one piece when we start reassembling it. So I'm gonna go ahead and quickly clean all this up and then go from there. And then luckily for the differential, the only other remaining work for this is to replace this crusty old bracket with this nice shiny new one. Oop. Again, everything will be zinc coated on this car. So that will just go and so that will just sit on here like this. And I'll get that placed in there. And then we're gonna have to replace this with our new differential bushing. Now, I didn't even think about this, but I might need to get some new hardware. This is one of the few pieces of hardware that I am not, or I didn't plan to replace. I don't know why it's not focusing. So yeah, this one is very corroded and the head is kind of like rounding out. So I need to find some new hardware to put in and hold this bracket in place. And luckily for me, I bought some extra hardware not too long ago before I bought all that zinc coated stuff. And in there, we had a few extra 10 mil bolts and the thread size was perfect. So put those in, now we have that on, and I did clean up underneath this, clean up the O-ring that was sitting in there, and then all the rubber gasketing. So everything here should be perfect. Now we just need to tackle this. I don't know how much of this I'm gonna record. I'm just gonna kind of go at it and get that out, put this new one in, and then from there we can continue on with the rest of the process. And just like that, we got our differential ready to go. Honestly, that bushing was a lot easier than expected to take out. What I ended up doing was taking a metal saw or a metal blade on this right here, and then just cut enough where I started to see the, where'd it go? The outer edge kind of split apart on the sleeve itself. And then from there, I just took a hammer and a screwdriver, flathead, and just started tapping away until I got behind there and then kind of relieve some of that tension. So you could do that same thing yourself, and then I just tapped it in with a hammer as you guys saw. So honestly, not too bad. I know a lot of people struggle with that. And this is the moment in me editing the video where I realized I didn't plug in my mic, so none of the work that I did today had any audio whatsoever. Instead of me just tossing all the videos, I'm just gonna do a quick voiceover, so that way you guys can still follow along with everything that we did today. It wasn't much, but yeah, we'll just continue here. And if you're wondering why we're doing a voiceover now, that's why. So we started off by moving everything from the table down to the floor, so we had a good idea of where everything went, and we can start planning out the rest of the rebuild process. As you guys can see, we put the gas tank back up. Luckily, it wasn't too hard. We made sure that we got everything lined up, bolted it back up, and plugged in any fuel lines that we originally took off, and I'm hoping that I put them back properly. I got some of the silicone sealer just so we could kind of seal up the ABS sensors that go into the hub itself. I noticed that when I took mine apart that there was a bunch of gunk in there, so hoping that this prevents that from happening again. I'm not sure if this is the correct way or even a good idea, but I think it could help, so I'm just gonna try it. And this is the exact moment in the day where I realized I messed up and there was no going back. I started to put on the hub on the actual trailing arm itself and realized that that's one of the last pieces that need to go on. What I should have done was attach the trailing arm to the subframe and then took the subframe up into the car, and then from there installed the hubs, but only after I installed the brake dust shields and the handbrake assembly and so on. And then from there I can install the axle. I kind of mixed up the process and got a little excited by putting the hubs back in, because then the trailing arms would have been complete per se. So now at this point I got to run back to AutoZone, get the hub puller again from them, take the hub off, and then continue the process. So this kind of threw a wrench in the day, and honestly, since AutoZone was almost closed, I didn't really feel like running down there and rushing the entire process. So the idea here was to just stop here for the day, get that hub back off, and then continue doing things the right way like I should have from the start. Again, it was just me getting excited and jumping the gun. That mistake kind of ended the day for me and didn't allow me to go any further. Plus, today is Tuesday. The video needs to go up tomorrow. So honestly, there wasn't much time to go get the part and continue the process. And we're this close to getting this subframe back in the car, getting this thing driving again. The sad part is we need to do this exact same process on the front side, but I'm really looking forward to it. And I think it's gonna be a lot easier than the rear of the car. So fingers crossed, and hopefully you guys stay tuned for the next video. Hopefully in that one, we'll get everything back up into the car and get everything kind of dialed in. But again, appreciate you all watching, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace.